Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's title story, a crazy Karen claims my son's asthma attack is fake because my son is too young and she then steals his inhaler. Here is what happened. And the title story starts like this. My son has asthma, he was not born with it, but it developed quite early on in his childhood. The doctor speculated his hay fever might have been what triggered the airway infection. It was actually quite horrifying when he had his first asthma attack. He was and still is a very sporty and active person. From about the age of 6 he wanted to do every sport and every activity and try out every club. He would stick to one for a couple months before he claims he doesn't enjoy the activity or sport and ask if he could try something else. We were more than accommodating to his desires, believing that he needed to experience all that he wanted in order to find the things that he loved doing. One such activity was basketball. He loved playing basketball, and his favorite team was the Seattle Supersonics. Despite being from Milwaukee, he had a bit of a Sonic fandom going on at the time too. When he was in the middle of a training session, he suddenly became short of breath, took a seat and continued to struggle. Until there came a point where breathing practically stopped. I must admit, I didn't stay cool one bit and panicked like crazy. Luckily, the coaches were very well trained in children's health and recognized the symptoms of a panic attack. Now, the doctors tell you that it's important not to share your asthma medication with anyone else, as they might require different strength of medicine, but this was an emergency, and luckily for us there were a couple of asthma sufferers at the training session and had their puffers ready. It was enough to get my son through the asthma attack, and we were able to book an appointment with the doctors and get him properly diagnosed and treated. The whole process was so streamlined that it barely took a week for the doctors to be able to identify what severity of asthma he had and to prescribe him his own puffer. Now, I remember when I was a kid that asthma was a pretty big deal, and there were several kids in my school growing up that had asthma. We would always interrogate them about their puffers and what all the different colors meant. There were blue ones for opening up the lungs and brown ones that administered the medication once the lungs were open. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing a pink one, but that might have just been a style choice of the person with the puffer. There were also grey ones, white ones and other types I don't really remember, so when my son got his own one, there was only one and there was no shaking it or depressing the pressurized canister. You literally pop the cap and suck on the teat. Though he still had to take a couple of breaths. One thing that really struck me was how it looked remarkably similar to the vape gadgets everyone seems so inaugurated by. However, it clearly wasn't for smoking. It was known as a fluoride asthma inhaler. I wanted to get the doctors to provide a normal looking puffer, but my son, who was 10 at the time, insisted on the fluoride one, so I let him, a decision I would soon come to regret. As expected, my son's new puffer went down a storm with his friends, and I had to constantly reassure their parents and our teachers that it was a modern design puffer for his asthma and provided a doctor's note on more than one occasion. I knew I should have stood my ground being the parent and all and got a regular puffer, but it made my son so happy and confident with his affliction. How could I be expected to take that away from him? One day when we were coming back from basketball practice, things took a turn for the rather dramatic. I've read a lot of stories about Karens and how they can be rather invasive in other people's lives. I always took them with a pinch of salt though, as I know that people have a habit of exaggerating stories sometimes. However, that was until I saw a Karen in the wild myself, but it started simple enough. So we were on the bus on our way home from basketball practice, and like I said, my son was a little wheezy from the constant running around, so naturally he took a puff on his puffer. That's when the woman sat in the seat behind us started grumbling. I didn't really pay much attention to it at first and really did not link it to my son taking his medication. That was until her mumbling grew a little louder and I could hear that she was complaining about how kids should not be allowed to vape. At first I thought I must have misheard her and then thought that she must be talking about the people we were passing outside. I came to realize, since being made more aware of it, that there are a lot of people that like to vape now. I happened to catch sight of the woman out the corner of my eye, and she was giving me and my son the meanest evils. Like full-blown daggers that I could practically feel stabbing into the back of my head. Well, several stops later and she is becoming increasingly more audible about her views on children and vaping. And yeah, I would agree with her, children should no more be allowed to vape than they should be allowed to smoke, but what could I do? She had a right to her opinion and I couldn't exactly turn around and tell her to shut up, what kind of person would that make me? But anyway, several more stops down the line and my son is still having a little wheezing issue and pulls out his puffer once more. That was it. Karen lost her mind and yelled at me, "Why the hell are you letting your kid vape?" I turn around to her confused as hell and tell her that my son has asthma and it's his new inhaler. "Bullcrap," Karen says. "He's too young to be sick." This really struck me and I honestly didn't know what to say. Kids get sick, it happens whether it's a cold, asthma or cancer. It is a sad state of affairs, but just because they are young and innocent doesn't mean bad things don't happen sometimes to them. I tried to reassure her that it was my son's asthma inhaler, but she is too clouded by her own self-righteous BS to listen to a word that I'm saying. She snatches the inhaler away from my son and starts shouting that she was not gonna let me hurt my son anymore. At this point, the other passengers are starting to get involved, some are with Karen, and think that I would give my son a vape, others are defending me, saying that they have friends and family with a similar puffer. Things were getting ridiculous and all-out war was about to break out on the bus. We were pretty evenly divided, with those taking Karen's side and those taking mine, but with no real progress as everyone was just trying to shout over each other. In the end, the bus driver had to pull over and he added his own voice to the situation, trying to get everyone to calm down. However, no one was paying him any attention. He threatens to call the police, which sparks some idea in Karen as she pulls out her phone. "I'm gonna call the police and have them take your son away, you monster," or words similar to that effect. There was so much panic I cannot quite recall the exact turn of events. I'm constantly trying to reassure Karen that she has it all wrong as she is pulling out her phone and dialing 911. My son is getting frustrated as he needs his inhaler and the situation wasn't helping. He was getting short of breath and desperate, so he tries to get the inhaler back from Karen. I was too slow to stop him. Karen freaks out and slaps my son, like full on whacks him across the face, leaving a huge ugly red hand print. The bus falls deathly quiet as I react on instinct and punch Karen full on in the side of the head in defense of my son. By the time the police arrive at the scene, Karen is laid out in the aisle of the bus. No one is on her side anymore after she just assaulted a minor, and with my son now in possession of the puffer, everyone could see that it was not a vape and that Karen had freaked out over nothing. I take no prisoners when I talk to the police and press charges to the fullest extent that I can. No one hits a kid and gets away with it, especially not when it is my son. To make a long story short, Karen ended up behind bars for a long time because, as everyone should know, assaulting a minor with dozens of witnesses present is a terrible idea. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I really hope that's a lesson for all the Karens out there. Don't assault people in public, especially not minors. But first and foremost, don't claim that someone's disability or illness is fake and try to mess with them. That is just a stupid idea. Either way, if you like my daily content, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much, and the next one is another revenge story. A commercial repair person was working on something in the parking lot beside the side of my backyard. He left his keys in the ignition and the door open so that the opening was pointed at the side of my place. My nice summer day with windows open was mangled by a constant pinging. He wasn't using the open door to do anything, and after about half an hour I asked him if he could close his door to stop the noise. He would not and was surly at the suggestion that I would even make such a request. The pinging went on. I asked again, maybe not so nicely. Nope. After another half hour I decided that it was time to water my garden. I got the sprinkler and set it in a new location that would throw a little water over the fence and onto his open door. It was not much, but as the pinging continued, it got wetter and wetter. It was hardly noticeable. Knowing the pinging was being offset with some petty revenge made it easier to deal with as it continued. I happened to be in the kitchen to see the nasty look he sent my way when he returned to the open door. It still brings a little satisfaction for me to know he could have prevented it by not being an a-hole. And the next one is another revenge story. So this happened a while ago, but I still laugh about it. I was on my way home on a pretty major state route where the speed limit is 55 until you go through a town and it can drop to 45, sometimes 30. In this story it drops to 45, so I was coming down a pretty significant hill and we all know that vehicles pick up speed while doing so. As I came down the hill, I started braking. Since the town had a speed limit of 45, the guy behind me did not like that. He was on my ass so incredibly bad, I could count the whiskers on his face. As I went through town, I had to pass a fire department, and sitting on the opposite side of the road was a state trooper. Cue petty revenge. As I drove past the state trooper, I gestured to the cop to look behind me. I didn't think anything would happen because who is that lucky? Apparently, it is me. I kept watching in my rearview mirror, and roughly a mile out of town, a hole behind me got pulled over. Thank you, New York State Trooper. And just because it was so nice, we have another revenge story waiting for us. So I divorced my ex-wife over 5 years ago for repeatedly cheating on me with over 13 different men and 2 women. To give you some background, my ex and I used to be swingers until the last year of our marriage. Things had spiraled out of control, so I said that I was done swapping partners, but unfortunately she didn't agree with me and kept hooking up with guys behind my back. 6 months prior to our divorce, my oldest child was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. I won't go into details to preserve my anonymity. She started to crack under the pressure though and started to drink in a lot, putting herself and our children in danger. It got so bad that I moved out of the house for a couple of weeks and took our kids with me. During this time, her best friend, we will call her Amy, approached me because my ex had disclosed all of her dirty deeds to her at girls' night out a couple of days ago. She disclosed that she had been sleeping with a new guy every night and getting drunk when she had the kids. She also told Amy that she went out one night a month ago and left our 3-year-old and 4-year-old kids at home alone while they slept so that she could meet a new guy. Amy said that my ex planned on filing for a divorce once she drained some additional money from me while living rent-free in my home. Emmy and I were both disgusted and knew that things had to come to an end. My ex hated living in the same house with me because she hated me and couldn't go mess around with her flock of desperate men. We had to come up with a plan to get her out of the house and document all of her poor behavior so we could limit her custody of the children. Step 1, I moved my happy rear back into the house and plopped down on the bed right next to her. She lost her mind saying that she wanted me out of the house now and would call the police if I didn't comply. What she didn't know was that I was recording the audio of our conversation. I told her to pound sand and she called the cops reporting me for domestic violence. Well, the POPO showed up in no time flat and had me in handcuffs so fast it made my head spin. The detective came to the squad car to talk to me and I let him listen to the recording. The longer he listened, the more angry he became with my wife. Before long, she was the one in cuffs in the back of the squad car and she got to spend the night in jail. She went to stay with Amy for the next week as she wasn't allowed back at our house. I got a restraining order. During this week, she went on a veritable spending spree, buying herself a new laptop, new iPhone, full retail price, and a new wardrobe. She drained our bank account and started to dip into my savings. Amy also confirmed that she was drinking heavily at her house to the point that she threw up and defecated on herself all over her bathroom. Amy video recorded her bender for posterity's sake and provided me with 20 minutes of video showing a woman out of control drunk. The next day I went and withdrew all of our money from savings and deposited them in my new bank account so I would have money to pay the bills. I closed that account so she couldn't use overdraft protection and leave me on the hook for the overages. I closed all of our joint credit cards and transferred all of my investment accounts into an account solely in my name. She lost it when she found out that she had no money to burn through anymore. She told Amy that she was contemplating ending her own life because things had gotten so bad. I hate my ex, but I didn't want to see her harm herself at all. So Amy convinced her that she needed some help and went with her to check into an inpatient mental hospital. This worked out fantastic because she was getting some help, but also it showed that she was a danger to herself and the kids. It was time to put the last part of our plan into action and seal the deal. I went for a consult at my attorney to start the divorce proceedings and complete the needed paperwork. My attorney was appalled at the actions of my ex and was 100% on board with helping me get primary custody. He filed my divorce decree and also got the judge to agree to a temporary restraining order until our initial hearing. We also served her the papers while she was in the hospital and set the initial hearing for 2 weeks. The initial hearing came and she showed up with her attorney. Since it was a pre-litigation hearing, they did not know what information we had. She got on the stand and started lying her heart out, telling the judge how abusive I was, and that is what pushed her into the mental hospital. She made a very compelling case and put on a Grammy Award-winning act. But then it was my turn. My attorney presented all of the evidence, videos and bank records. The defining moment was when my attorney called Amy to the stand to testify. She told an appalling story about a neglectful mom who was completely out of control. A story about a mother who had substance abuse issues that were only getting worse. My ex could not close her mouth the whole time that Amy was on the stand. She made her attorney look like an idiot as all of her lies were now being exposed and were contrary to what she told him. When the dust settled, I was awarded sole custody and she was awarded supervised visitation until she went to rehab and got additional treatment. We quickly settled out of court, agreeing to a graduated visitation schedule once she complied with rehab and mental health counseling. I got the house after paying her a portion of the equity and got to keep all of my investment accounts and get to see my kids 80% of the time now. She got to live with her mom for the next 2.5 years and jump from job to job. Life is pretty good 5 years down the road and is even better knowing that she's not my problem anymore. And yeah, Ripe stars, even though this is quite a sad story actually, I am glad for OP that it all worked out in the end for him. I do hope though that this woman gets the help she needs, and maybe in the future she can be there for her children. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. This one is titled Revenge on Rude People. I work as a train driver. I drive smaller trains mostly out on the countryside, and people are generally nice and well behaved. But of course, there are also the alcoholics, drug addicts and general weirdos that use public transport, and some people that just live to be a pain in the butt. This was a few years ago. We were traveling in the late afternoon and my conductor, let's call him C, storms into the driver's cabin, angry and annoyed, and tells me, "C, we have 2 rude good-for-nothing guys on board, and they are such a-holes." Me, what did they do? C, they have no tickets, refuse to pay and just laugh up in my face and are saying, "What are you gonna do about it?" Me, what the hell? Should I help you throw them off at the next stop? C, we can't because they are just traveling 1 station, so they are getting off at the next stop. Damn smug guys with their "what you gonna do about it." So then we are both angry. I let the conductor rant and let off some steam. Next stop comes and the guys get off. The conductor angrily gestures at them. "That's them, they're little pricks." We continue the short remaining journey and have a break at the end station. Some hours later, the train then goes back. Since it is on the countryside and it's a late weekend evening, the train is almost empty on the way back. The conductor knows every passenger on board is getting off and she is up at front with me, chatting and all is fine again. Until we approach the station where we let those guys off. We see 2 people standing there, and it is them. My conductor besides me shines up like a damn sun. She says with the biggest smile on her face, "Don't stop." And I am just laughing, slowing down the train, not stopping though, and when we pass them, my conductor opens the window, waves and says loud and happily, "That is what I'm gonna do about it." The guys are just staring at her with their jaws on the ground when we drive past them. We are laughing. All the way to our home station. We were the last train for the day. Edit, I wrote in the comments that we encountered these guys again a few weeks later. I will post it here as well because these guys did not learn the first time. They apparently got on at the same station like last time, but we did not notice them. They had plans to travel further than last time, but when the conductor went out to check the tickets, it went like this. Conductor spots them, recognizes them, says loudly among the other travelers, "Oh, are you able to pay for your tickets today?" They just fidget and say, "No, we ain't got no money." See, well, ain't that a shame? I guess you have to get off at the next stop then. Them, what the hell? Can't you be nice and let us be? What the F are we gonna do at that crappy station? C says, "Guys, I don't give a damn. You're going off this train and you can walk to the next station. I'm calling the train behind us so they won't pick you up either." They got off and the other train called us later because they saw the guys walking on a forest path along the railway track. And I have not seen these guys since. And yeah guys, obviously, if you are riding the train without a ticket, which is already not good in the first place, but I can sometimes maybe understand it given you are in really bad circumstances, you should at least not act like a douchebag. But then again, that's pretty much the golden rule for life. Just don't be a douchebag. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.